Om. Om Sahanā-Vavatu, Sahanā-Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. For all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Jai. Okay, so we pick up here. What's the question? The second question.
Oh, the second question.
Second question, yeah. The
How
question.
do I discern between I and not I?
Ah, very good. What is the not I? What is the non-Atman? What is the Atman? And how can I discern between the two? Very good. So this is where we are. And Shankaracharya is walking us through the three experiential states: waking state, dream state, deep sleep state, to help us to discern the I and the not I. So, utilizing this, and then over the next few days, we'll keep this here, and he goes in a bit of a deeper dive from here as well into these.
Because there's got to be something besides this bondage.
Oh, indeed. Okay, so we discussed the physical body yesterday. And its nature is, can we say this one more time?
Birth, decay, and death.
And death.
Good morning.
Very good. Good morning. Lest we forget. And today is another day closer to that, isn't it?
And Hari wears party socks.
And the death, birth, decay, and death, is specific to the physical body. Physical body consisting of the forms, the gross senses, such as tongue, nose, skin, eye, ear, and the gross organs of action, which we hadn't really talked about, but we introduced now, which are the feet and the hands and the vocal cords and the anus, and the sex organs. So, organs of action. Okay. And we had discussed the mind. And mind is actually indicated here, but of course mind is operating through the physical body. And we discussed the physical body as the instrument through which the Atman, the I, experiences the external world. Okay, so now we step in, and its field of action is of the three states, its field of action is what? In simple, just say it. I just said the three states: waking state, dream state, deep sleep state. Of the three states, its field of activity is waking state. Okay. Oh. And now we step a little deeper. 8 groups make up the subtle body. And we'll see that they're identical, but they're the subtle forms of. So the subtle first, and he says 8 groups. First group, the 5 organs of perception. So the sense organs that are here are really here in the subtle body. And we can say for a moment, just to catch it, in the dream state. And the subtle body is the subtle body is the seat of action, and we'll discuss that more. The seat of action, but also the subtle body is experienced in dream state. Yes, where the physical body is experiencing the field, the subtle body is experiencing the imagined field in dream state, right? The imagined field. And we know when we, quote unquote, wake up that the field in the dream state only existed in the, where? The field in the dream state existed where? In the mind. In the mind alone. Huh? So, but in the dream, do we smell? Do we taste? Do we talk? Do we move about? Yeah, that's our experience, isn't it?
Yes.
So we know that what happened last night, the roller coaster that I rode last night, wasn't actually a roller coaster in a physical sense. It was a roller coaster that existed in my mind. Yes? But nonetheless, I had the experience of riding it. I had the experience of seeing things. I had the experience of tasting that corn dog and all of these things. Still, I had the experience of them. And, not to joke about it, but of course, one of the more common ones is with the sex organs in the dream. So we know that these have subtle equivalents in the mind, in the subtle body. This is what's being pointed out here.
Swami, I have a question.
Yes, dear.
Are you saying that the subtle body, so to speak, operates as like a feeder to the physical body?
It's the inner person.
So flowing through.
Acting through.
Acting through.
Acting through.
Acting through, okay.
Yeah.
The action.
So it's clear if there's a sense of hearing, it is the subtle sense of hearing, as it were, acting through the ears.
Okay.
The physical body is inert, and you can tell that when it's on a slab.
Yes.
So the ears don't hear. Is it so?
Oh.
The ears do not hear, but there is hearing. And where does the sense of hearing reside? It resides in the subtle body. The physical eyes don't see, or they would see just fine when the body's on the slab. And so, but there is a sense of sight. And the sense of sight resides in the subtle body. In the mind. In the mind. So we can say the subtle body is in consciousness. And we discuss more the sheaths as we go on, but the three sheaths consisting of or making up the subtle body or astral body or the prana, so the life force or the vital airs here. And as we discuss, we see that the vital airs are the subtle form of breath. The body doesn't breathe. Something is breathing through the body. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the vital airs breathing through the body. The prana, pranamaya kosha. The manomaya kosha, the mind, function of mind, the field of mind, as it were. And vinyamaya kosha, the intellect, rationating faculty. So we can consider the manomaya kosha, the field, the mental substratum, but also the thoughts themselves, manomaya, mind. The rationating faculty, vinyamaya, the ability to ask questions, rationate, think about, consider, reflect upon consciously. The brain doesn't think, or it would think on the slab. And so this too, then the physical, as it were, is underlain by the astral or subtle. But all of the activities that we attribute to the physical are in the subtle. All of the actions, all of the activities. So the body on the slab doesn't move and grasp the microphone. There's no intelligence, there's no life force, there's no thought, there's nothing other than the meat itself. And so, right. So all of these that we talked about, they exist at some level. It's relative, but they exist at some level. But we could say they're the grossification of the subtle. In the same way that ice is the grossification of the subtle water. So the 8 groups, 5 organs of perception, and again, we check the dream and we can see it. We can see that all of this is still functioning in the mind, as it were, because the entire field of the dream exists in the mind. So 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. Do we walk in the dreams? We were just saying, do we have sex in the dreams? Do we speak in the dreams? All of that.
As if.
Yeah. 5 functions of the vital force. So, a funny one is we may not remember going to the bathroom in the dreams. That one seems to be not quite as prevalent.
Yeah.
And yet I can testify that it does happen.
That was not my favorite. Swami. Let's change the subject.
When I was a kid, I had an incident like that.
Yeah, okay. Oh. Okay.
I thought it was a real bathroom.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. That's how it goes.
Stuff happens.
That's how it works.
Okay. The 5 subtle elements and the mental organ together with ignorance, desires, and karma. Now ego was discussed as this self-consciousness, which arises when the mental organ identifies itself with the body. Here, he's speaking of ignorance as being an aspect of the subtle body. Subtle body is composed of the subtle elements before they have entered into the 5-fold compounds. It is the seed of our desires. We'll take a minute with that. So, subtle elements. Hard to think of even, although possible to consider and reflect upon them. Because again, the gross elements such as space, air, fire, water, earth, we can relate to through the sense organs, right? Through the physical sense organs. Yeah? The way we relate to space is the absence of the other 4. But we learn through study, scientific study, that space also has qualities, even though it's empty. And we can learn of the pervasiveness of space, etc. But the other 4 we can directly experience, yeah? Air, fire, water, earth. We can experience these through the senses. Okay. So we imagine that that's the reality of the senses. That's the reality of the elements. Please forgive. I looked at the word senses. The word senses came through. So.
Can you say it again?
Yeah, so the gross elements, we're calling them the gross elements here.
Yes. Space,
Air, fire, water, earth. Because we can relate to them through the senses, we imagine that that's the reality of them. But in fact, they also exist in the same way as the sense organs exist in the subtle. The subtle form of the elements actually make up the causal body. Here, we give an example. You can catch it. You just can't directly sense it with the 5 senses. But in a way you can in the dream. So, but here. You eat spicy food here. And the spicy food, the components of the spicy food. Yesterday morning we had the tofu scramble. And I put just a very little bit of cayenne in the tofu scramble. I don't know if that was noticed, just a very little bit. If there would have been more, you would have noticed it. If there would have been a lot more, you would have noticed it in your mind, in your thoughts. The thoughts would have tended to run on. They would have been more rajasic. More excitable, more active. And you would likely see that in your dream as a nightmare. Okay. That's the subtle form of that earth element. The gross form of the earth element is the powder. The subtle form of the earth element is the mind stuff.
The dream.
It's not the dream. It's actually what the subtle body or astral body or mental body, but it's not just mental body. So that would be wrong to say it's just that, because included is the light, is the vital airs, the pranas, the mind, and actually it is what we are experiencing, because we say we're experiencing a world outside, and yet what we're experiencing is the mental perception of the world outside, right? We say, I'm with Bill, but actually Bill is a name and a form, pointing to something deeper, but we're with our idea of Bill, meantime. Bill did this, Bill did that, etc., etc. Well, all of that stuff, what is it composed of? The composition of it is the subtle form of the five elements, in the same way that the body is composed of the gross aspects of the five elements. So you can see it in the mind. Another way to catch it is that if you've ever experienced the wind on your face in a dream, tell us about that air as an element. Right? It's not the gross form of the element, correct? So another way to relate. So subtle body is composed of the subtle elements before they've entered into their fivefold compounds. So before they've become, okay. And it is the seat of our desires. The subtle body is the seat of our desires. So all of the experiences in the physical body are bringing the experience into the mental aspect. Yeah? Okay. And they're stored, as it were, in the mental aspect, in the chitta, in the form of samskaras, both the experience and the idea about the experience, good, bad, etc., etc. So the experience leading towards pleasure could result in desire. Where does the desire arise? Well, the desire arises in Vinimaya Kosha. The desire arises in the intellect. And it becomes more firm through the intellectual process.
You're intentionally using pleasure and desire.
Pleasure, pain, this life seems to be all about pleasure, pain. It seems to be.
Yes.
It seems to be. It seems that, but this is the egoic view. This is the delusion. The delusion.
The desires in the subtle body.
So the subtle body is the seat of the desires.
Yeah.
You could say that experiences are through the physical body, but actually the activity is all in the subtle body. The desires are also in the subtle body.
Pleasure
Your
and
question.
pain are in the physical.
No, pleasure and pain also exist only in the mind.
Subtle.
Subtle. Different people, and again, if you want to check it, And what we're doing here is we're exploring the non-Atman right now, but we're also doing it related to the Atman. So that question we started this with, this is what we're exploring.
The I and the not I.
Yeah, through exploring the not I.
Okay.
And then we come back to, as a reference to the I.
Okay.
And we haven't really talked at all about the I yet this morning. We're discussing, all that we're discussing is the field, different fields. So the physical field, the waking state field, and the instrument through which the waking state, the sense objects are experienced. The instrument through which painful experiences and pleasant experiences are experienced, but the field of the experience itself is the inner experience. It's not the outer. It's not the pinprick. The pinprick is something that happened in the physical field, but the pain associated with it is happening only in the subtle body.
So, Swami, about the pleasure and pain, there is information that comes, so there is an input from the outside or from the senses.
Yeah, and it's really the subtle senses, just to catch it. You see that, right?
From the subtle, yeah.
Yeah, it's the subtle senses that are providing, that are collecting and providing. The skin is just an instrument of that. Okay.
And then there is an assertion from the mind saying either this is good, pleasurable, or not. But you see if there is something in between there, between those two.
Like what?
Like the thing that is like pleasure or pain. There is a sensation that is universal, like if you smell a flower or something like that.
Oh yeah, there's the sensation itself. The rest of it you're dealing with the mental aspect. But this, where is the sensation occurring? You can say within the subtle body. Mm-hmm. So there is a sensation. There is an electrical impulse. Mm-hmm. What seems like an electrical impulse.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So you can say that the sensation itself is related to the vital airs, like that.
But there is something even beyond the sensation. There is something that, what is this pleasure? Like what?
Satchidananda, of course.
And what is the pain?
Satchidananda, of course. What is the highest nature of it?
Yes.
What is the eternal nature of it? Yeah. For the eternal nature of it, you have to get to Brahman, or the self.
Right.
But for the experiential nature of it, then we're dealing with the field.
Okay.
So
it's not a separate.
But pain and pleasure do not reside in the sensation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So continuing to explore, and this is what you're asking also is covered as we go through. It continues to be. Again, the question is, and you can get here for a second. What is the Atman, or the I, and what is the non-I, and how to tell the difference? So some sensation is experienced, is it correct? Okay. So that is the not I.
Yes.
Okay. What am I experiencing? The not I.
Always the answer. Always the answer.
What is the cause of it? Well, Maya.
on the diagram, right in the middle. It's a tiny dot. It's not such a big deal.
To whom is it happening? Who is experiencing it? I am. So,
Who, me?
Oh, and there are within the. We'll let Shankara walk us through it, but within the. Within the field, Maya, Prakriti, mind, whatever name we use for it, it's the arising of what exists in potential, simply absolute potential, in balance. And what exists in balance in the I, or in Brahman. What exists in balance is consciousness and energy.
Oh.
In balance, unexpressed. Okay, so energy, is that not the electrical impulse?
Mm-hmm.
So it's prana, life force, the vital airs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Does that resonate at all?
Yes, but I still have the question: what is pleasure and what is pain? Like, for example, if you eat
Pleasure and pain arise only within the mind. And they are not absolutes, absolutely not absolutes. And look at the different experiencers, the different persons, as they were, and you see that which is pleasurable for one is painful for another.
I understand all that, but I'm trying to pinpoint what it is exactly. Like, for example, if you eat a chocolate, why is that pleasurable?
Maya.
So it's just a sensation.
There's a corollary question that you really have to ask as a student, which is, where does that pleasure exist?
In the mind.
And you have to come back to there, right? Mm-hmm. So it exists only in the mind, and it's completely relative.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Right.
So therefore it's negated. It doesn't have any real existence. It only has a relative existence. Where did north come from, Hari?
North.
Where did north come from? Where did cold come from?
Mm-hmm. The same. Yeah.
Same as asking why.
Well, and I'm not trying to make somebody feel away for asking a question. I'm just saying pleasure and pain are exactly the same as north and south, or hot and cold. And where do they exist?
Yeah.
So we'll discuss Maya a little bit more tomorrow morning. We have this article, our dear Saraswati, who might be joining us this morning online. I never know for sure. She might. She's very excited about this article in Scientific American. We'll read a little bit of it tomorrow morning. But it's the same thing that the physicists are dealing with. But time, where does time exist? Future and past, where do they exist?
In the mind.
Where does distance exist?
In the mind. Also.
Where does pleasure and pain exist?
In the mind.
In the same place. So what is its nature? Well, it's inexplicable and not easily understood by any mind. It can't be. Conceptually, it's possible to grasp it sometimes. The physicists are breaking their heads. But the question about the not I and the I, is answered, which is the pleasure as it exists in the mind that places the pleasure in the subtle body, correct? And it places the pain in the subtle body. And the desire is in the subtle body. The seat of the desire is there as well. And is that the I, or is that what I'm wearing? This is why when Lord Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, second chapter, he says, pleasure and pain come and they go. Therefore, endure them bravely. Yoga is equanimity of mind. Yoga is skill in action. Yoga is equanimity of mind. So he says you're not to be disturbed by them. Why? Well, we get here because they're something we're wearing. They're clothing that we're wearing. They're not independently real. And so where do they exist? Maya, mind, prakriti. Why? Well, that gets back to this question. When Swami Prabhavananda, when asked this question, why? He'll smile and he'll say, well, the story is like this. He says, Brahman, one without a second, the absolute, complete, full, Satchidananda, had a thought. How did he have a thought? And the thought was, I am one, let me experience myself as many. And you see, even with pleasure and pain, there are infinite states along the direction of pleasure and along the direction of pain. In the same way that there's infinite time along the direction of the past and along the direction of the future. And there's infinite space along the direction of the east and the west, or the north and the south. And so let me experience myself as many. So if I'm to experience myself, then and this steps into where we go tomorrow morning, then I have to generate a way to experience myself. That's the discussion of Maya, which we'll just touch on tomorrow. But I'm experiencing that Maya as a field, yes? And it's a field that consists of all of these experiences, including the experience of pleasure and pain itself. And ultimately, what am I experiencing? Well, myself. Capital S. Or Brahman, in the mirror of Maya, as it were. But here's the point that Shankara is wanting us to catch. With the physical body and the subtle body, both, they're instruments. We're wearing them. And he's trying to help us with using this logic, using the power of discernment, with discovering this and catching the answer to the question, what is the not I? So he's laying out the experience and the instrument of experience. He's laying out where the experience is occurring. And so we see already that experiences are occurring in the physical and experiences are occurring in the subtle. And can we see that really it's the subtle that we're identified with? This is the seat of all of the mental activity. and the life force and the experience and the desires and the attachments and the delusion we discussed a little bit more related to Maya. Okay, let's check we need to close. Let's check for any other questions or comments.
Saying to this transmission has been breaking up the whole time for me.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Maybe just for one person.
Well, it might be if we don't have more. We'll find out. We'll find out. Okay, let's close with final prayers and arati. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashitu Kavak Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mritor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Ambalo Sakuru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai.